Well, since U.S. President Donald Trump raised the aluminum tariffs to 50% in June, Canada has been shifting its aluminum exports to other parts of the world. My next guest says this high-level tariff on aluminum is simply not sustainable.
It is one of the most widely used metals on Earth.
Global demand for this resource, which is significant today and going to be much more significant in the months and years ahead. And to have a third of the relative to the global reserves, to have a third of that resource present right here in Saskatchewan, that's a significant discussion.
The price of a new car just went up again. So did the construction bid on the apartment complex going up downtown. So did the defense contract for the next generation fighter jet. None of those people writing those checks fully understand why. They think it is inflation. It is not. It is a 50% tariff on a single metal that sits inside almost everything America builds. And the country that used to supply most of it just quietly redirected its shipments to a different continent. Before 2018, the trade geography of North American aluminum was simple. 95% of Canadian aluminum exports went directly south into the United States. Same border, same business language, same technical specifications, same logistics. It looked like a permanent arrangement because it functioned like 1-2 economies, so physically and commercially integrated that separating them seemed not just difficult, but irrational. Then Section 232 arrived. A 10% aluminum tariff justified on national security grounds dropped onto every Canadian shipment heading south. The relationship that looked permanent cracked immediately. And when the tariff climbed to 50% by 2025, the crack became a full structural break. Canada did not hold press conferences. It did not announce retaliatory trade wars. It did something considerably more effective. It started signing contracts with different buyers. The Canadian government accelerated its use of CETA, Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, with the European Union to unlock zero-tariff aluminum export quotas into a market of 450 million consumers. European automakers and aerospace companies were simultaneously under intense regulatory pressure to lower the carbon footprint of their supply chains. Canadian aluminum, smelted using clean hydroelectric power in Quebec and British Columbia, carried exactly the green credentials those manufacturers needed. Canada did not just find substitute customers. It found customers who specifically wanted what Canada had and who were willing to pay for the certification to prove it. 7 years later, the numbers describe a complete reversal of the industrial map. Canada's aluminum exports going to the United States dropped from 95% of total volume down to 22%. The European share climbed from near zero to 18%. The remainder spread across Asian, Middle Eastern, and Southeast Asian markets. An export structure that had been essentially locked to a single destination for decades was completely reconstructed. In less than a decade, Washington did not see it coming, because Washington was watching tariff revenue figures, not trade geography trends. Inside the United States, the aluminum market moved exactly opposite to what the policy intended. The 50% tariff was designed to make domestic production competitive by making imports expensive. The structural problem it could not overcome is physics and geography. Smelting 1 metric ton of aluminum requires roughly 15,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, 4 times what the average American household consumes in an entire year. The countries that lead global aluminum production, Canada, Norway, Iceland, all operate on abundant, cheap hydroelectric power. Industrial electricity costs across many American states run 30 to 50% higher than Canadian rates. No. Tariff eliminates that underlying cost difference. So instead of firing up new domestic smelters, the United States shut the ones it had down by 2025. The entire country had 4 primary aluminum smelters left. Only 2 were running at full capacity. That is the lowest figure in American industrial history. The downstream damage spread through every sector that uses metal as an input. The Midwest Premium, the price gap between domestic aluminum and the London Metal Exchange benchmark doubled after the tariffs hit auto parts suppliers facing locked-in contracts, suddenly absorbed raw material costs. They had no mechanism to pass back. The auto sector alone lost 29,900 jobs. Lumber and building materials shed another 18,000 independent economic research, put total manufacturing job losses across downstream industries at 98,000 more than the combined total workforce of the entire American steel and aluminum industries combined. A policy designed to protect 140,000 metal workers eliminated nearly 100,000 jobs everywhere else. The workers who disappeared from the data were not smelter. operators. They were auto assembly technicians, construction workers, electronics assembly line staff, packaging operators. No signing ceremony acknowledged what they lost. The consumer costs landed directly in household budgets. New vehicle prices climbed by several $100s per unit due to elevated steel and aluminum input costs. Home construction costs followed the same trajectory. Upward appliances, beverage cans, window frames, commercial HVAC systems, every manufactured product with metal content became more expensive, at least in part because of a policy described at its signing as protecting the American worker. When Canadian supply pulled back, the United States needed replacement volume. The market's answer was the UAE and Bahrain, both carrying massive aluminum smelting capacity and cheap energy on a spreadsheet. The substitution made sense. Geopolitically, it represented exactly the kind of supply chain vulnerability. The original tariff was supposed to prevent American aluminum supply shifted from a stable neighbor, sharing a land border, and decades of integrated infrastructure, to suppliers halfway around the world, with shipments routed through the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. That waterway, as recent months have demonstrated, is a choke point that closes under geopolitical pressure. America traded supply chain stability for supply chain risk and called it reindustrialization. Meanwhile, in the communities built around aluminum in Kentucky and across the industrial Midwest, the human arithmetic was straightforward and painful. Factory wages do not just pay individual workers, they sustain the grocery store, school, the local service economy attached to every working plant. When a smelter shuts down, not because it lost customers, but because electricity costs made it structurally uncompetitive, the damage does not arrive at once. It arrives one storefront closure at a time, one family relocating at a time. Across months and years, the operational knowledge required to run a smelter accumulated over decades by workers who understood every system intimately dispersed. The moment those workers left, Canada kept building Quebec smelters, powered by hydroelectric rivers, are now certifying aluminum to European Union carbon standards and signing long-term contracts with European manufacturers who will not easily walk away the green supply. Chain advantage Canada developed was not the result of strategic planning. It was the result of Washington's tariff forcing Canada to find buyers who valued exactly what Canadian production had always offered the policy that was designed to push Canada out of the American market, created the conditions that pushed Canada toward a better one. 30 days until zero. That is the warning American manufacturers just got. The metal that makes cars, jets, and refrigerators is disappearing fast, and executives are scrambling. The Pentagon is watching, but do you know the craziest part? The country that could solve this crisis in 48 hours is the same one Washington attacked with tariffs last year. Now, America needs Canada badly, but after what we did, will they even pick up the phone? Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, attempting to project confidence about weapons production. Defense manufacturers agreed to quadruple output of advanced weaponry. Plants are expanding. Production schedules are accelerating. The message, America is stocked and ready. But between those lines of confidence, another reality is emerging. In an earlier post, Donald Trump acknowledged concerns about high-end ammunition levels, blaming the previous administration for giving away advanced weapons to Ukraine without replacing inventory. At the highest end, we have a good supply, but we are not where we want to be, he wrote. That admission matters because it reveals strain on the system even before you factor in the aluminum crisis now threatening to compound those problems exponentially. Bloomberg published a report warning that American aluminum supplies could run dangerously low, potentially hitting zero in less than 30 days. Production disruptions across the Middle East following the war escalation left American suppliers with almost no major foreign sources. US aluminum purchasers are now scrambling to secure replacement shipments from Asia as the conflict involving Iran interrupts a key external supplier. This shift could push prices even higher for the metal used in automotive components, household appliances, and beverage cans. Those are not luxury items. Those are the backbone of American consumer manufacturing. Cargo traffic through the Strait of Hormuz came to a practical standstill. Two major regional producers, Qatar and Bahrain, halted shipments to customers. The United States depends heavily on imported aluminum. Middle Eastern countries accounted for nearly 20% of American aluminum imports last year, according to government statistics. That is not a minor supply line. That is a fifth of total imports suddenly offline. Andy Massey from Bonnell Aluminum, a company that shapes aluminum into components for vehicles and building materials, confirmed his firm is urgently searching for alternative sources. We are all scrambling to figure out what is happening on the ground in the Middle East. I need to find alternative supplies over the next 2 days, fast, and make sure we do not overpay. 2 days. That is the timeline American manufacturers are operating on while trying to replace supply chains that took decades to build. And the alternatives are not simple. Aluminum from India is currently seen as the most likely seaborne replacement for American buyers. But shipping it across the Pacific takes roughly 60 days, according to John Simard, Chief Executive of the Aluminum Association of Canada. 60 days versus 30 days until supplies hit zero. The math does not work. Some producers may attempt domestic purchases in the short term, assuming any supply exists outside long-term contracts. But domestic aluminum production in the United States has been declining for years. The capacity simply is not there to fill the gap. Another company facing identical challenges is RM Metals, a New Jersey-based distributor of specialty metal products. Vice President Sam Desai confirmed the company is searching for alternative suppliers while cargo shipments remain delayed in Dubai. Even before the Iran crisis, American manufacturers were already paying some of the highest aluminum prices in the world because of Donald Trump, 50% tariffs. At the same time, shipments from Canada, which would normally be the most straightforward alternative for US buyers, have continued declining under Donald Trump tariff policies. Canadian producers increasingly redirected their exports toward Europe instead of fighting tariff barriers to sell into the American market. Here is where the policy collision becomes undeniable. The tariffs were enacted under legislation allowing duties in certain industries for national security reasons. The justification protect American aluminum production by making foreign imports more expensive. The reality, American aluminum production did not scale up enough to replace imports, and now the tariffs are blocking the fastest route to solving the crisis. Simard suggested this could be a timely moment to review US tariffs on Canadian aluminum. Translation, drop the tariffs immediately or watch critical industries collapse. Roughly 6 million tons of primary aluminum metal that has not yet been recycled is effectively stranded across the Middle East, according to Simard. Most smelters in the region have only about 30 days of alumina remaining in inventory. Alumina is the key raw material used to produce aluminum. If the Iran crisis drags on, aluminum smelters across Gulf countries may soon be forced to cut production because the near closure of the Strait of Hormuz could leave them without enough alumina. And if those cuts begin, the consequences ripple across global supply chains for months or even years. This is not a temporary disruption that resolves when ships start moving again. Once smelters shut down, restarting them takes 6 to 12 months. Bank of America raised alarm bells about the broader implications. The regional conflict is expected to widen the global aluminum deficit significantly this year. Given the Middle East accounts for around 9% of global production and supply is now at risk, analysts raised their shortfall forecast to 1.5 million tons, up from 1 million tons. That is not a marginal adjustment. That is acknowledging the crisis is worse than initially assessed. Some producers already began shutting down operations. Qatalum, jointly owned by Qatar State Aluminum Producer and Norway Norsk Hydro, announced it started a controlled reduction in output due to natural gas shortages. The company warned that a full restart could take 6 to 12 months. Analyst Tim Natanners delivered a blunt assessment. There could be more smelters affected, which would magnify the impact. Aluminum smelters need to run at full capacity. If they cannot, they shut down. And this is not a quick fix. That is the industrial reality Donald Trump tariff strategy did not account for. Aluminum production is not like turning a faucet on and off. Once capacity goes offline, bringing it back requires massive capital investment, technical expertise, and most critically time. Time American manufacturers do not have. The cascading effects are already visible. Automotive plants rely on aluminum for engine blocks, body panels, wheels, and structural components. If supply tightens, further production lines slow or stop. Appliance manufacturers need aluminum for everything from refrigerator doors to washing machine drums. Beverage companies require it for cans. Construction companies use it for window frames, siding, and roofing materials. Aerospace manufacturers depend on specialized aluminum alloys for aircraft frames. Defense contractors need it for military vehicles, missiles, and aircraft. This is not one industry at risk. This is the entire industrial base, facing potential disruption. And the solution sits 100 miles north of the border. Canada is the world's 4th largest aluminum producer. Canadian smelters operate at high capacity with reliable hydroelectric power, keeping costs competitive. Transportation infrastructure connecting Canadian production to American manufacturing is already built: rail lines, truck routes, border crossings designed specifically for bulk metal shipments. Under normal circumstances, Canadian aluminum reaches American factories within days. But Donald Trump's 50% tariffs made that economically unviable, so Canadian producers found buyers in Europe instead. Now, American companies are begging for access to supply they voluntarily pushed away. The administration faces a decision that exposes the core tension in its trade strategy. Drop the tariffs and admit the policy failed, allowing Canadian aluminum to flow freely and stabilize American supply chains within weeks. Or maintain the tariffs for political reasons and watch critical industries face shutdowns, price spikes, and prolonged disruption. There is no middle ground here. 30 days until potential zero supply does not leave room for gradual adjustments or face-saving compromises. Donald Trump's post about defense production revealed the deeper problem. He claimed the US has a virtually unlimited supply of medium and upper medium grade munitions, but acknowledged that at the highest end, we are not where we want to be. High-end weapons require advanced materials. Advanced materials require reliable supply chains. Reliable supply chains require aluminum. If aluminum supplies hit zero, it does not matter how many orders defense contractors receive. They cannot build weapons without raw materials. The industrial capacity means nothing if the inputs are not available. More than a year into Donald Trump's second term, the United States now confronts a question it should have asked before imposing tariffs. What happens when the supply chains you pushed away are suddenly the ones you need most? With aluminum supplies tightening and the war putting additional pressure on resources, the administration may soon face that critical decision. Will Donald Trump drop the tariffs on Canadian aluminum? Or will the conflict have to end before the industrial crisis resolves itself? American businesses are pressing the Donald Trump administration for an answer. Manufacturing executives are making their case directly. Industry associations are lobbying. The urgency is building because the timeline is unforgiving. 30 days does not leave room for committees, studies, or political calculations. It leaves room for one decision: solve the problem or accept the consequences. And the consequences, factory shutdowns, job losses, supply chain collapse, skyrocketing prices, are not theoretical. They are 30 days away. The clock is ticking, and Canada is waiting for the call.